I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two.
I want to start this video by saying that I'm not asking for money and I'm not asking for sympathy. What I'm asking for is if you are a young 14, 16, 21-year-old girl, listen up. I drove to the grocery store. I need to grab some milk and bread and a couple of things, flipped open the bank app on my phone, and I've been sitting in my car crying ever since because I never have enough money. And why do I never have enough money? Because when I was a 19-year-old girl, my Mormon faith told me that I was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. I got married. I started having babies. I dropped out of college. I never had a career. My only jobs that I ever had in life were a waitress at the Olive Garden and managing a pretzel maker in a mall. Oh, my first couple years of marriage, I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, so I bought a windshield business. I was 20. And my Mormon stake president reminded me that women weren't supposed to work, so I quit my own business, handed it over to my husband, took my name off of it. I would work our family business throughout the next 24 years of my marriage, but I never got paid. I didn't have a salary. My name wasn't on it. I literally worked for room and board. That's it. I never had a bank account. He would give me little envelopes of cash to go grocery shopping with. All of the money went into his bank account. Nothing was under my name. So I found myself divorced at age 44 just 5 years ago, and within just a few months, I was living in my car. While he made about $250,000, he would eventually quit that job so that he wouldn't have to pay alimony and child support. He has only paid alimony one time ever in the 5 years since we've been divorced. Once ever. For 24 years, I lived in $1 million homes. I vacationed all over the world. I spent my summers in Hawaii. I could buy myself $500 jeans, diamond tennis bracelets. We had boats and RVs and whatever I wanted. And it never bothered me once that my financial security was dependent on that man being in love with me. I never realized that him liking me or not liking me or finding me sexy or attractive or interesting determined whether or not my children could eat, whether or not I could buy myself a fucking jug of milk and a loaf of bread.
Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Jenny. This is Life Take Two. I know there's a lot of really great stuff out there on YouTube, and I always appreciate when you stop on one of my videos. With these 3 million new Epstein files being released here recently, there is a lot of conversation around the system that allowed all of these young girls to be trafficked around the world. This is something that really hits close to home for me because, like so many fundamentalist religious children, I was a victim of a different type of trafficking. As a Mormon trad wife in a forced marriage, I was both a sex and labor trafficking victim, and I lived that for 24 years. I was forced by my Mormon leadership to marry a man that I had only been on. It was our second date when he molested me in a hot tub. And our leaders told me that because of what had happened to me, that absolutely nobody else would want to be with me and that it was my obligation to marry him to make that right. I knew nothing about him. And our 11th date was our wedding in the Mormon temple for time and all eternity. The really devastating thing about human trafficking that nobody talks about is the dehumanization of the victims by those who are exploiting them for whatever it is that they want to get out of them. So again, as a Mormon trad wife, forced into a marriage with a man that I did not know, the church benefited because I was serving in the church for free. I was teaching in the youth ministry. I was running the women's program. I was doing so many things for free for the church, that forced labor, often under threat of losing my eternal life. There was one particular summer when the bishop, again, nothing in Mormonism is volunteer, it's all forced labor. When the bishop called me to be the girls' camp leader, and we weren't even planning to be there that summer. I was going to go home to my mom's house with the kids, get a little break from things. And I told him, I'm sorry, I can't do this. He then spiritually exploited me by threatening my loss of eternal life. I remember him using the phrase obedience with exactness and telling me that I had taken an oath in the temple that I would obey my priesthood leaders, and that if I didn't do that with exactness, that I had the possibility of losing my chance to live with Heavenly Father for the rest of eternity in the celestial kingdom with my children and my grandmother who had died. So guess what I did? I said yes to that calling. I was forced to be free labor for the Mormon Church for 44 years of my life. The biggest benefit to the Mormon Church, though, the main reason why they married me to this man was obviously for the fruit of my womb. I was breeding the next generation of Mormons, which in a lot of traditional bride trafficking situations, that's exactly what the women are used for. They are used for their reproductive capacity. That's what the Mormon Church exploited me for. So I escaped that life 7 years ago when I lost my faith in the Mormon Church and left. And then 2 weeks later, escaped 24 years of domestic violence. And as I ran for my life and the safety of my children from these systems, my life crashed down around me. And I was really surprised. I didn't understand why within 10 months of my divorce, I ended up homeless, tent camping, sometimes sleeping in my car in a Walmart parking lot, sometimes couch surfing with friends. It was shocking how difficult it was just to be able to eat, to have enough food for myself and my children. That video that I just played at the top here, that was me just 2.5 years ago, as I was going through this whole process of leaving the Mormon Church and escaping the terrifying relationship. I started filming, and I was one of the original pioneers of Ex-Mormon TikTok. I made this personal commitment that I was going to film all of the hard stuff. I was filming what I was legally allowed to of some of my court hearings. I was filming like me trying to figure out how to make money to provide for my kids when I'd never had like a college education that could help me do anything. And I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 24 years. So I filmed all of that. I filmed starting a little furniture flipping business in my backyard and selling dining tables and rocking chairs on Facebook Marketplace and making my first money as an adult. I also filmed myself in the food stamps line, trying to get some benefits to help me and my kids so that we'd have food to eat. And during this whole process, I was just surprised at how hard everything was. It was impossible for me to get a job. It was impossible for me to get financing to go back to college. It was really difficult to just have enough money to survive. And that video from 2.5 years ago, for example, which was one of the most embarrassing social media moments of my life. Again, I had that commitment that I was going to film everything, not realizing that that video was going to be shared around the world so many millions and millions of times. I'd been working on a dining table all afternoon. I had like paint on my face. And that was just me being vulnerable and sharing something that I was going through that was so hard. We never had enough money to get through the whole month with our food stamps. Like me and the kids had that last week of the month that no matter how much I couponed, no matter how I stretched our budget, I think our food stamps were like $360 a month. I just couldn't make them last. And on that day, I just needed some basic supplies, some bread, some milk. I was hoping to buy like some lunch meat and some peanut butter and bananas and some apples and things like that. And I pulled into the parking lot of the grocery store, opened up my bank app, and I think I thought that I had $60, but I only had $20 in the account with no money coming in. It's not like I had a job. I was just running a little business in my backyard flipping furniture. So I started crying my eyes out and decided to just film the whole thing. And that's what that video was about. And as I went through this entire process, I realized that the system is completely stacked against women. And so I've spent the past several years of my life figuring out what would have changed my life when I was a Mormon if instead of being taught that I was a helpmeet, that Heavenly Father had made me to be a submissive wife and that I was going to have a provider husband, well, what if the Mormon Church had taught me that women need to be able to provide for their children too, and that I should get an education that's actually going to provide some type of an income for me? What if I had been taught that it's okay to be single? What if my church had taught me that you shouldn't get married until you're 25 years old because your brain isn't fully formed? What if I had learned any basic feminist principles at all? What if, for example, in high school, instead of being pushed to spend all of my money on prom and eyelash extensions and having my nails done and just look pretty so that I could attract a husband, what if I had been taught to put my money in the bank and save so that I could provide for my own future? So I spent the past several years developing a program that literally would have changed my life if I had been taught any of these things and had these habits in my life instead of the really bad Christian nationalist submissive wife stuff that I'd been taught. it would have changed everything. I wouldn't have had the 24 years of abuse. I wouldn't have been sleeping in my car or in a tent in a ravine after my divorce. I call this program Man Proof Your Life. And for a couple of years, I taught this to private clients. And it did, in fact, disrupt the negative system that women are stuck in. And it changed lives. And on an individual level, these behaviors have completely changed my life. As a 51-year-old woman, everything is different for me. Now MAGA is in charge and the patriarchy has completely taken over in America. And so I spend a lot of my time researching and talking to experts like financial planners, accountants, professors, family law attorneys, politicians about women's place in society, about the system that we women are existing in. And it's become really obvious to me that just changing my life is absolutely not enough. And helping a couple of clients change their lives is not enough because this system, and again, with Donald Trump and MAGA, this system is trying really hard to take over America. This system is terrible to women. And this isn't a design flaw. This is what the system was designed for. The American capitalistic, industrialized Christian patriarchy was designed specifically to entrap, enslave, and exploit women. And I'm no longer that concerned about how one individual woman over here and one individual girl over there changes their lives and gets free. I am obsessed with how we dismantle this entire patriarchy brick by brick and bulldoze it to the ground, and then bulldoze a mountain of dirt over the top of it. And if possible, just burn the entire thing to the ground. Because until that happens, we are all just living in an Epstein world. And our daughters are living in an Epstein world. And to one degree or another, women are going to continue to be exploited. So today I'm going to read for you my solution to this. You can read this for free on my Substack. By the way, I've removed all paywalls from all of my Substack because I just want people to be able to access my research, my writings, and I'm not out to make money on that. So if you'd like to pay for a membership just to help a girl out, you're welcome to. Otherwise, it's a free membership and you can read everything without paying a penny. This essay is entitled How to Actually Fuck the Patriarchy. I mean, let's actually fuck them up. How the patriarchy almost killed me. And then I found myself in a vast tribe of women through my ex-Mormon TikTok community, and my whole world changed. There is zero chance that my life would be in any way what it is today if it weren't for women. In fact, a few women, including my surgeon, Dr. Gustafson, who listened after all the male doctors had already decided I was nuts, but it turns out I wasn't. Specifically, I don't point this out in the article, but for 12 years, I've had extreme abdominal pain, constant recurring visits to the ER with bowel obstructions, and finally a bowel perforation. And in imaging, they always were like, oh, everything's good. You're fine. You don't need help with anything. Just don't eat raspberry seeds. You have diverticulitis. I finally got my very first female surgeon, and she just went in and cut me open. And it turns out that my intestines were adhered onto my bladder. There were little fistulas going back and forth in between. And again, my intestines had perforated. So I had widespread infection, including abscesses and scarring from the bacteria. And I don't even know how I'm alive. Some of you who've come over from my TikTok watched me go through those surgeries and barely survived that. Anyway, Dr. Gustafson, first woman surgeon that I've ever had, decided I wasn't nuts, and she saved my life long after the male doctors had written me off. I theorize that humans are actually supposed to be matriarchal, as evidenced by everything we know about ancient humans before patriarchal governments, family models, religions, and community took hold. And the only way to have true peace is to return global power to women. I want you to think about two phrases for a moment. Big brother is watching you. Instant terror. Big sister is watching. Someone is about to paint your nails and have a karaoke party in the basement while mom and dad are away. Men did not evolve to lead. And it's only the females of the tribe and exceptionally empathetic males, usually the betas, who can do so with both strength and compassion. These days, we can easily lose ourselves in the minutia of politics and current events. I know there's always so much stuff going on out there that we can focus on. We can waste energy fixating on these news stories and individuals, but the real crisis is much more simple to solve. We must topple the unnatural patriarchal structure that has invaded our species like cancer and put the aggressive alphas back in their place before they destroy Mother Earth and before one more Epstein girl, P. Diddy victim, or Minnesota mom is harmed. The most healthy human societies in the past were dominated by female-centric practices and ideologies, and they are emergently needed today. It's time we burn not one leader, not one perp, not one nation or religion to the ground, but instead it's time to go full scorched earth and put the whole male-dominated thing to rest. Here's how we dismantle the patriarchy together, because I always like to have a plan. Patriarchy does not survive because it's natural. It survives because it's highly organized. It has been reinforced for millennia by self-serving sociopathic control freaks through laws that control our bodies, economic systems that keep us dependent, religions that sanctify our submission, and cultural narratives that teach us to shrink, soften, and serve. Patriarchy is not just men. It is the architecture of power that decides whose voices matter, whose labor is valued, and whose autonomy is negotiable. It's important to note that many men are indeed harmed by the patriarchy also, men who would enjoy protection and nurturing within a matriarchal framework. The truth is, the patriarchy will not fall through awareness alone. If we're just out there protesting, if I'm just out here on social media talking about it, nothing happens. Talking sometimes feels like action. It's not. Talking is talking. Action is action. The patriarchy will fall through action. Make a note of this one. Feminism is not a feeling, it's a practice. If we want to shift power in America towards women, we must stop asking for permission and start building systems that center us. At some point, we all need to accept that our Prince Charming is not, in fact, going to come save us and make our happily ever after come true. Not our own personal romantic prince, not a prince of the people and the government. It's time for us to straighten our tiaras, square our shoulders, and slay our own damn dragons. Here's what that actually looks like. Here's what we need to do. That means showing up to every election, not just the presidential ones, but the local races that shape schools, courts, housing, and healthcare. Power is written into policy, and policy is written by those who bother to participate. Vote only for women or for men who are feminists. It means circulating our money among women-owned businesses because financial independence is the foundation of real freedom. When women control capital like the men do currently, we control our futures like they control their future. We must talk openly about money, investing, and economic survival because silence has always been one of patriarchy's most effective tools. If there are two restaurants you enjoy, pick the one owned by a woman. We must teach girls not just to dream, but to own, to understand credit, contracts, and negotiation, to expect compensation for their labor and respect for their time. We must teach them that love should never cost them their autonomy. Don't let them get caught in this tradwife trap that destroyed my life. Patriarchy also survives on invisible labor. The emotional, logistical, and caretaking work women are expected to provide for free. The listening, the organizing, the soothing, the remembering. I supported my husband, my sons, and the entire Mormon church with my cooking, cleaning, serving, and breeding the next generation of workers. Refusing this unpaid labor is not selfish, it is revolutionary. Our energy is not an endless resource, and our lives are not support systems for other people's comfort, period. Next, language matters, jokes matter, cultural norms matter. Every time we challenge sexist humor, call out degrading narratives, and refuse to laugh at our own erasure, We are reshaping the emotional landscape our daughters will inherit. Don't stream the sexist shows. Don't download the misogynistic songs or follow the douchebag podcasters. Next, we must amplify women's voices, not just the loud ones, not just the famous ones, not just the pretty ones, but the everyday brilliance of women who are building, teaching, organizing, healing, and leading in their communities. Visibility is not vanity, it is influence. Click like, subscribe, and share. Buy their books, donate to their movements. We must prioritize our relationships with other women because strong female networks dismantle isolation. And isolation is where patriarchy thrives. When women support one another emotionally, financially, and politically, we become less dependent on systems that were never built to protect us. I work really hard to build out my own tribe with intergenerational friendships, supporting a couple of single moms with the occasional bag of groceries and shared trips to the zoo. I actually keep a grandma pass just to take a single mom friend and her kiddos. I don't need to go to the zoo. I paid for this pass so that I can help a single mom. And also, I do love the zoo. So there is a benefit to me too. And I am in a committed relationship with a heterosexual male, but he's not the center of my universe. He's part of it. I still prioritize those female relationships. Yesterday afternoon, I was at a group. I don't want to say what the name of the group is because I don't want people stalking me, but it is a multiracial women's group. There were about 32 of us yesterday at brunch. It is designed to break down racism, and it is such a beautiful thing. And I set aside a Saturday afternoon away from my honey, away from everybody, to build those relationships with women. Just like I help single moms and the younger generation, my daughters and stepdaughters, I also have older female friends whose knowledge and company and wisdom I treasure. We must normalize female pleasure without shame, without apology, and without moral policing. Women's bodies are not public property, religious instruments, or political battlegrounds. They are our own. Autonomy over our bodies is the most basic form of freedom, and MAGA is trying to take this away from us on every level right now. My body count is my business. My skirt is not a turn on for anyone. And our young adult daughters should know that a glass of wine and a toy makes a smarter and much safer Friday night date than a frat boy. No regrets either. We must demand equal pay, not politely, not quietly, but persistently and publicly. Economic inequality is not accidental, it is engineered. Again, this is hard baked into the system intentionally. And it will only be corrected through collective pressure. The men aren't all of a sudden going to be like, oh, hey, let's start giving women our jobs and our power. We all want female managers, CEO presidents, and actual presidents. No, they're never going to do this. The system isn't going to change itself. We must collectively put the pressure on the system or nothing's ever going to change. Next, we must protect reproductive freedom with everything we have because control over our fertility is control over our futures. A woman who cannot choose her path is not free. And with that, we must be smarter than ever with our personal reproductive planning. Here's my advice. Use 2 forms of birth control if needed and here's my advice. Here's my advice as a grandma who's had a lot of babies. Use 2 forms of birth control if needed. An accidental pregnancy can ruin lives for generations without proper resources and preparation. How many of us have a life story of a mom who wasn't ready to have a baby, who is over capacity in the number of kids that she had? And so our life story is poverty and neglect and abuse. Ladies, that's on us. There are so many birth control options out there. Use them. Again, my toy drawer and a glass of wine, that's never going to get anybody pregnant. But I am a grandma who's had a complete hysterectomy, so I don't have to worry about this, thankfully. And we must teach boys emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and accountability because patriarchy damages them too. A culture that punishes empathy creates men who confuse power with dominance. We are the mothers of the next generation of men. Hug them as much as you do your daughters. Teach them compassion and kindness. Next, we must stop centering men in our lives as the default. Women are not supporting characters in someone else's story. We are the authors of our own. This was a massive shift for me as I left the Mormon church, my 24 years of biblical marriage, and MAGA, and blended my life with a wonderful, again, male partner. A lot of people think that I'm a lesbian. I'm not. I have Kevin in my life. Now, he's very empathetic. So I don't know. In some ways, I have my cake and eat it too. But I've had to learn at times, with the help of my therapist, books, support groups, things like that, to prioritize my time and my happiness and ask him to take a back seat. Because again, coming out of Mormon tradwife life, my default operating system is Kevin is number one. I'm number two. That submissive wifey mode has been really, really hard to just completely erase from my operating system. But I wrote this essay right here because Kevin was driving kids, shopping, doing laundry, and keeping our home quiet so that I could think. We must leave relationships that harm us, silence us, or diminish us. Personal liberation is political. Every woman who walks away from abuse weakens the system that depends on her staying. It's time we all stop being mommies with benefits for these half-grown men who treat us like crap. We must invest in women's education because knowledge is the antidote to control. An informed woman is a dangerous thing to oppressive systems, and they know that. Teach your daughters to prepare for their futures. Take them to museums. Help them fall in love with the library and the bookstores. I am everything I am today because of books. My mom had no idea, as she was like making sure that I wasn't watching MTV, that I wasn't listening to any women's libbers growing up. But she gave me a library card and she took us there once a week. She had no idea that she was planting the seeds of rebellion in the library shelves. But she was. Next, we must call out abuse, exploitation, and coercion whenever we see it in families, workplaces, religious institutions, and governments. Silence protects power. Truth dismantles it. Email your senators and demand the Epstein files, demand accountability for these men who perpetrated these crimes against children. Report abusive comments on social media. Whenever I see a douchebag saying something assholey, I always report it. Speak up in big ways, speak up in small ways, speak up however you can, but speak. We must mentor younger women, not to mold them, but to support them as they grow into their own authority. Power multiplies when it is shared. I volunteer to read books in schools from time to time and do all that I can on my social media channels like this to role model skills I learned that have helped me along the way. Female tribal elders are so important. We must create women-led spaces, physical, digital, and cultural, where leadership, safety, and creativity coexist. The future will not be built in rooms where women are merely invited. It will be built in rooms we create ourselves. And finally, we must all tell the truth about our experiences, not the sanitized version, not the palatable version, the real one, because our stories are not just personal, they are political. Tell a friend, write a book, share your journey with your daughters. Again, that's everything that I do on my platforms, including that very embarrassing video where I decided to film myself having a mental meltdown because I only had $20 to spend on groceries. I think that story is so important. It's important for women to see what the patriarchy does to us, the risks of tradwife life, the risks of the American nuclear family in a system that isn't built out with any support for women. We don't have a safety net. They don't want a safety net because they want us trapped. Patriarchy is not a single enemy. It is a system. And systems fall when enough people refuse to uphold them. We don't dismantle patriarchy by waiting to be chosen by the men offered their approval and a place at their table. We dismantle it by choosing ourselves and building our own damn table. A note of hope here at the end. I successfully fucked the patriarchy in my personal life and am thriving as a result, as are my kiddos. And I believe we can raise it to the ground on a societal level and dance on its grave. The end. Ladies, if we did just this and nothing else, we would change the future for our daughters. Every day I have this thought in my head that we are writing the future today that our children will live out tomorrow. we've got to write them a better future. The only path forward for humanity is to return to a matriarchal structure, politically, economically, financially, that protects all members of the tribe. These rogue alpha males shouldn't be in leadership positions ever, ever, ever. This has got to stop. Again, this article is available for free over on my Substack, so if you would like to print it and post it to your fridge, send it to your daughters, send it to their boyfriends, and I'll be hanging out in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Here's what I'd love to hear from you. Which of my points hit you like a ton of bricks? I think that for me, the most immediately life-changing was refusing the unpaid labor, because financial self-reliance is definitely the key to being able to implement all of the rest of these. So that's a biggie. Thanks for watching. Mwah.